This is a Check This Out exclusive.
Of the 7.2 billion people on Earth, 3 billion have internet access. 2.1 billion are using social media right now.
Check This Out News, coming to you live.
All right, once again, it's on. Check this out, always bringing you something new. Today we have something very unique. Various regions of the country, let alone world, are known for the liquor they produce. California is known for wine, Kentucky and its bourbon, Missouri, and of course beer. Well, there's a distillery headquartered in Salt Lake City, Utah, that's producing some damn good tequila, vodka, and gin. A company you should check this out. All right. With us, we have the CEO of Dented Distillery, Mark Christensen, who has to be the first and only distillery based in Utah. Believe that. On the line right now, we have the CEO of Dented Distillery, Mark Christensen, who has been the first and only distillery based in Utah. Mark, what's good?
Yeah, man, I'm just down here with a bunch of the investors, and we're having down in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, and we're having our second annual bash, and we're drinking a bunch of Dented Brick rum, and we're having a good time. That's
what's up. Now, it's kind of interesting. They allowed you all to import all your own stuff, huh?
Well, I don't know if they allowed us to, but I got a suitcase that takes a 12-pack of rum, and we shipped some down here. So,
okay, you right.
Why not?
It's in the U.S., so why not? We got it through the customs.
I'm not mad. So
right?
let's talk about Utah and liquor, which seems a little almost out of touch, so to speak, man. But come to find out, There's actually a lot of history there that our listeners would be surprised to know. So give us some of the history on Utah and the production of hard liquor.
Yeah, so it's interesting. There was a guy in Utah, 1850 to 1870, named Hugh Moon, and he actually made whiskey for the Mormons. So the Mormons drank until about the turn of the century, and Hugh Moon actually came over from England on a boat, and he was going to meet Joseph Smith in New York and then travel with what they called the Saints all the way to Chicago. And his boat was late, and so Joseph Smith wrote him a letter and said, take the Erie Canal down to New Orleans and then take the riverboat up to what they called Nauvoo, which was the Mormons' homeland in Chicago from New York. So Hugh got there, he built his still, and he had it up running when Joseph and everybody showed up. And then there was kind of a shootout. I don't know if the liquor was involved or not, but Joseph got killed and his brother got killed, and Brigham Young took over the Mormon church, and they moved to Utah. And this guy, Hugh Moon, the distiller, was personal bodyguard of Brigham Young, and they went all the way to Utah with their wagon trains and all that. And Hugh Moon took his still, and he started a distillery in Salt Lake City. And he had a couple of business partners. We've got some advertisements from the Salt Lake Tribune from about 1870, selling their whiskey to the locals in Salt Lake City. And he made a lot of money, and I think Brigham Young was kind of jealous and wanted to make money too. So Brigham Young bought his own still and tried to make his own booze, and he couldn't sell it. Everybody wanted Hugh Moon's booze, so he confiscated Hugh Moon's still and sent Hugh Moon on a mission to St. George, Utah, for 2 years. And when Hugh Moon came back, he didn't have any money, and he didn't have a still, and he didn't have any property anymore. He had a bunch of property before he left. So
tragic.
Hugh went up to Idaho and homesteaded, and that's kind of the history of the West, the real West, you know?
Okay. So Brigham Young finessed him out of his product.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this, Mark. What inspired you to open up a distillery in Utah?
So I grew up in Idaho wine country. So you probably don't know there's an Idaho wine country, but there's an AVA in Idaho called Sunny Slope. And I grew up in the Sunny Slope AVA, and I grew up around a bunch of winemakers. When I was a kid, we could get driver's license when we were 14 years old, and I used to drive. My dad had a ag company, so we sold spray booms and spray hose and pumps and those kind of things, and dripper systems. And when I was a kid, the dripper systems just came out, and so all the wineries wanted to go to dripper systems because the big sprinkler systems, they cause mold on the wine, right? So if you've got a sprinkler system and you're putting water actually on the vines, it causes mold on the leaves and on the grapes and all of that. And so these dripper systems were super hot. So I used to go out and deliver pumps and dripper system delivery stuff, like little hoses and little drippers and all that to all these wine guys, and I got to know them all. And some of them are still friends of mine now. And I really wanted to get into the wine business when I went to college, and I started a company after college. I worked in Park City, Utah for Park City Ski Area, and I started a barricade company, and I owned a barricade company for like 28 years, and I was like, holy shit. I want to get back to wine. And so I started an export company, and I was exporting wine to China, and then, somebody said, hey, man, this craft thing is booming in spirits. You should get into that. So I started making spirits and passing it off to my neighbors, and they started knocking on my door, and they really liked it, what I was making, and I said, well, shit, and give it a go. So kind of how it happened.
That's dope. Sounds very interesting. Particularly, I think you're the second coming of my guy Moon.
Yeah, man, I think so too. So we're going to release Hugh's actual labels. We got some of his family has come forward with a lot of historical documents and things, but one of them actually bought us our original Hugh Moon label. It's called Dew from the Moon. And we're going to re-release that in about a year. It's going to be a straight whiskey, 100% rye, bottled and bond. And it's going to have the original label, Dew from the Moon. It's really cool. It's the label from the 1850s, and it's I think it's going to blow things up, man.
What's the history behind the purchased land?
So it's crazy. So we didn't know this, but we bought the land because it had it was really hard to find a property in Salt Lake City. You can't be within 600 feet of a church or a school. And Salt Lake City is all churches and schools, right? And so it was really hard to find this property. And I had a real estate agent looking, and he looked for like 8 months. And he called me one day, and he said, Mark, I found this place. You got to come right now. It's like 7:30 in the morning. He's like, we've got to get it under contract. And so I went over there, and it was in South Salt Lake, which is just on the border of Salt Lake City. It was zoned for a distillery, and it had an artesian well. The people that owned the property, they'd been there for 3 generations. They were drilling artesian wells around Salt Lake, and artesian wells are kind of like springs. So I guess the granddad was a water witcher, so he could take a switch of a cherry tree, right, like a branch from a cherry tree, and he could walk across the land, and he could say, drill here, and they'd drill down, and eventually they would hit water. And so they drilled those wells all across the Salt Lake Valley, and for us in 1986, they drilled one in our land. And so we have an artesian water well, which is like a spring. So it's water from Salt Lake Aquifer, and the snow melt basically comes down in the spring, and it disappears into the ground. Like all the little streams coming out of the mountains go into the ground, go through all this gravel and everything down about 300 feet, and there's this huge underwater lake, and it has natural pressure. So our well, where they drilled in, it has pressure, so it shoots 28 feet in the air, 24/7. So we capture that, and we use that in our spirit. So it's like being in Kentucky, really, where they have all these awesome springs. We have our own spring right there. It's amazing, just pure luck, really. And so then, oddly, we found out later, like, Hugh Moon's family's coming in, and they're bringing plat maps of the valley from, like, 1870s, and Hugh Moon had a farm on the land we're on. So we're actually on Hugh Moon's land. I mean, it's, like, crazy. I mean, this distillery was supposed to be there.
It's almost like it was divine.
Yeah, man, totally crazy, right?
With all that being said, how did you come up with the name Dented Brick Distillery? How did that transpire?
So we built this distillery. We bought this property, and we had our plans, we had our construction loan, we were ready to go, and we were kind of waiting for the contractor to get it started. And I said, let's go to there was a little brick house on the property, and it had all these well drilling rigs kind of around it, and they were the well drillers, right? That drilled the artesian wells we talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
And so we said, well, let's pull some bricks and some of the wood off the house, and we can make a bar for the distillery, and we can put some of the bricks in the distillery. And so we get up the house, and we realize the front of the house had all these bullet holes. And so literally the dented bricks, they were like chipped bricks from this shootout. And one of the well drillers got in a shootout with the cops, and he was killed on the front porch of this house.
R.I.P. R.I.P.
Was this recently? I mean, before you did it, or was
fairly,
this?
Yeah, before we got it, but fairly recently. It's like in the late 80s. And so we were like, wow, well, that's our name. And we were like, well, we can't, like, there's already a Dead Guy brewery, right? And we were trying to come up with names, and we came up with the name Dented Brick. So the bricks that had the bullet holes, they're dented bricks. We pulled them all off the front of the house, and we put them in the distillery. They're actually built into some of the distillery walls, and that's how we came up with this name, Dented Brick. And it's great because it's it's not really a word. So if you Google Dented Brick, you're going to get us.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess it's hard to dent a brick.
It is, right? And we also have a ghost now. So the ghost name is Ron. Ron Larson was the guy, and so we have ghost tours there as well. So we're going to get the ghost tour actually on the TV thing. I think they're going to come in and do a show about our facility. So.
That should be super cool. I mean, after having a couple of those spirits, certainly pun intended on that, right?
Spirits and spirits, man.
Spirits and spirits, absolutely.
We want to remind you to please like our Facebook page if you haven't already. When you join, you'll be able to receive weekly updated news and events, live video messages, and most importantly, you'll be able to interact with tons of people just like you. So go on that button on top of your Facebook page and give it a click, or interact with us on Instagram. Without each and every one of you, Tech This Out would not exist. We couldn't do it without you. Make sure to repost and share different things you see on our page. The more you share, the better. Be sure to watch previous shows on our YouTube channel, and please subscribe so that you can be notified when we post new content. We really want to connect and hear from you. So please don't hesitate to message us. And to find us online, please go to Tech This Out America on Facebook, Tech This Out on YouTube, Twitter, and all social media platforms. Get whole scope at techthisoutnews.com. We connect the streets.
Tell me this, Mark, what's the distinction with Dented Brick's products and other spirits in the same space?
A lot of our products, it's all about the water, right? You always hear that, like in Kentucky or like in Tennessee, it's about the water. So we have this awesome artesian well that these well drillers drilled. So like Ron and his family drilled these wells. And so that's why we have such reverence for Ron at the facility, that we put in all of these pieces from the house in the facility, because it's a huge deal for us. So we're not using city water. We basically have our own spring. So the artesian well is almost like a spring. It's got great minerals. So it's got magnesiums and calciums and all these salt minerals from the Salt Lake aquifer. And we put those into our fermentations, and the yeast love it. It's just like this mineral bath for yeast, and it creates these amazing spirits. They have such a great mouthfeel, and nobody else can make that kind of spirit with that kind of mouthfeel because they don't have access to our water. It's very unique to where we're at.
That's new. I learned something right there with that. Tell me this, Mark. So how are you using social media to elevate the brand?
So it's pretty much, we're a small company or a startup, so it's really the only way we have to market. So we're using social media through, your basic Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, but also we're using a lot of Instagram. And Instagram's awesome because if you use the right hashtag on Instagram, you can hit thousands of people. It's amazing. Like, just the hashtag cocktails or the hashtag liquor or the hashtag rum hits thousands and thousands of people.
Billions
and it's
and
really
billions
amazing.
and billions and billions.
I think for us, our demographic is kind of the millennial consumers who really like craft spirits. They want to go to craft bars, and they want to discover the cocktail. Like, they want to discover our brand. They don't want to be sold our brand. And so by using social media, it's out there, and they can find it if they want to. And then when they find it, they go in and they ask for it, And I think it's awesome. It's such a shift from the old school, like, mass billboards, Super Bowl ads are $20 million or whatever. Now a small company like us get out there, and we can be discovered, and we have awesome spirits, and the word can travel, and it's really cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, tell me this, as it relates to social media, which platform do you prefer the most, IG or Facebook, and why?
For me, I think it's the Instagram is the best one. To do a really good Instagram post, it takes some time. It's not just putting a photo out there. You've got to put all the right hashtags. You've got to spend some time doing it correctly. But if you do it right, I can hit so many more people on Instagram for free than I can on a paid, we don't even do like paid print ads anymore because it's a waste of money.
Believe that.
Instagram hits so many more people than just a printed ad. It's ridiculous.